Welcome to Expertise Unleashed. I'm Brian.
And I am Michelle.
And Michelle, today I think this is going to be a very good topic because this is something a lot of people don't think about. But before you think about starting a business or wanting to be promoted or even in your own home, you know, one has to be, or a person has to be a leader of themselves first.
Oh, 100%. I completely agree with that.
You know, and I think, so as we unpack this today, I think people will be able to take some nuggets and get some good things out of this because, you know, you realize early on, or if you have a mentor, you know, that you're listening to or following or something like that, you know, you will realize that there really are no shortcuts, you know, in life, especially if you want to go into a leadership role and especially if you wanting to go into business. You know, there are no shortcuts. There's certain ways that you have to function and be and habits you need to develop internally first, you know, before we can do something in a greater capacity.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think as we get started here, as we even just kind of dive in, what does it really mean to lead yourself? Because I think sometimes people just think, oh, I get up every day, I get started, I get going, I do good things with the work and stuff that I do, but don't really think about, okay, what does that really mean? What does it include? So let's start there. So personal leadership is like a fundamental or foundation for success. You know, if you can, emotional intelligence, we hear about that a lot. We also hear a lot about being able to read the room. It's also about not taking things personally, but always being professional in the way that you communicate, the way that you responding instead of reacting to situations. And so I think this is going to be, it'll be good to kind of unpack or kind of share some of the things that really kind of not only benefit, but what those characteristics are and how people can develop them.
Yeah, so it's funny because when you think about you know, prerequisite, you know, you know, you go to school and they'll say, like when you go into college or university, they'll say, well, you got to take this class. This class is a prerequisite for you to advance to the next level.
Right.
You know, so we all had to take those prereq courses. We didn't like them. They were always
math,
simple
science,
and easy. Really, it was a money grab on the college campus. The prereq classes, a lot of them were money grabs, but what it does is it sets the foundation, you know, like you were saying, to be able to go on and move to another level, you know, and to make things greater for yourself, you know, in that terms, education. So I think one of the biggest things, you know, is taking accountability and ownership, you know, of whoever it is, or I'll just use me for my own actions, you know, and I could think of times where, you know, I was very accountable for my actions, but there were times where I wasn't accountable for my actions, you know, and that went down a certain path. So, you know, when you look at taking ownership of everything, you know, let's kind of unpack that a little bit. So what does that look like for you? What did that look like for you?
Okay, so can I add to it before we?
Are you gonna dial back or you gonna add?
I'm a dial back and then come add. So
okay, cool.
So it is the ownership. It's also, you know, when you think about self-leadership, it's ownership, it's integrity, and then it's also clarity on making sure that you clear about, you know, I have a fundamental goal or a passion, or this is what I'm doing now, and it's kind of having all of that synced and linked together. So I just want to add those other two components to the ownership, integrity, and clarity. All right, so now let me go ahead and add on.
Okay, all right.
So you asked me, what does ownership look like to me? For me, it's a lot of, okay, what is it that I'm responsible for, right? In a workplace, you know, if I'm leading a team, you know, I do lead a team. That team is, you know, everything that we are responsible for doing that needs to happen, you know, ultimately the leader is the person who's going to take responsibility for all of it, good, bad, or indifferent. And it's one of those things too, where I remember Pastor Joe used to always say leaders are bleeders. And I was like, I hated that. I didn't like that term or that phrase, but in some ways it's true, because sometimes you take the hits. Sometimes you because you are responsible for a group of people that you're leading, or an organization that you stand at the helm of, if you're business owners and things like that. Like, at the end of the day, the buck is going to stop with you. And if something happened, you're going to be the person that they ask about it. So that ownership is standing in, you know what, I am responsible. I'm accountable to somebody for my team, or this work that needs to be done, this service that needs to be provided, this product that goes out. I take ownership for all of it. Everything that's included in it, I'm saying I understand that I'm responsible. I'm going to be accountable for it. I'm going to make sure that it gets done well. And sometimes as a leader, I own it. I stand in it. I have to, you take that ownership. If that's what if you're the leader, you have to take ownership.
You've had a book in your heart for years, but time keeps slipping. You've started pages, then stopped. Writer's block, overwhelmed, and that constant voice saying, who am I to write a book? Here's the truth. Your story matters, but trying to do it alone, that's what's holding you back. At Purpose Publishing, we help aspiring authors go from idea to published without the stress, confusion, or endless rewrites. Don't know how to write? We've got a formula that makes it simple. Stuck in your head? We'll guide your message with clarity. No time to do it all? Our done-for-you packages mean we handle the heavy lifting. You're closer than you think. We've helped people write books faster than they've ever imagined, and you could be next. Schedule your free publishing consultation today. Your message won't write itself, but we'll help make sure it finally gets written. Yeah, that's really, really good. I know you, I heard you mention clarity, and I think clarity is a very big deal because, when you're talking about leading yourself, anybody that wants to do anything, you're going to have goals that you want to accomplish. But I think as far as your personal accountability, like you mentioned accountability as well, you need to have clarity. Meaning you need to be clear on what it is that you're wanting to do, as far as yourself. Meaning, if I, want to live a long life and I want to have length of days, as it says in the Bible, then I need to take my health seriously. So what does that mean? Taking personal accountability, being a leader of one and yourself as far as your health goes. That means that I need to eat a proper diet. Whatever your consideration of a proper diet is, there's so much information out there. That means I need to get a certain amount of exercise. That means, I need to get a certain amount of sleep, to function at my optimum capacity. So I need to be clear on, a plan for myself on what it's going to take me to do that. So for a lot of people, that means, I can't have 3 double cheeseburgers a week, but I can have, these vegetables, these smoothies made out of fruit. I can eat lean meat, turkey, chicken, fish. I can mix in a little bit of beef here and there, but I'm taking personal accountability, for the diet, not necessarily just to lose weight or whatever. It's just being totally healthy, because a lot of people, I think, when they're talking about, being health conscious as far as being the leader of themselves and putting themselves in the best position to become a leader or to lead or to continue to lead for a long time, especially with business, I just want to lose weight. Well, no, it's about being healthy. So if you take that mindset, if you're clear about that, again, clarity is what I'm talking about. If you're clear about that, then everything else, all your decisions start to be guided by that. So, I'm working out, so now I can work out better. I can work out longer. A byproduct of me eating a proper diet and exercising and getting proper sleep is, yes, I probably will lose some weight. And as a byproduct of me losing some weight, my heart doesn't have to work as hard now. My wind gets a little bit longer. I can do more. I can work longer when I need to. and all of those sort of things. So I think being clear on what it is that you want to do, and having clarity about being a leader of yourself in that area, is very important.
100%. So, what you said something, health is wealth, right? Like I think we talked about it in another episode of how people, they may have the money, but if they don't have the health, it doesn't help. And sometimes if you are, not, as you're talking about, that clarity kind of causes you to make different decisions. As a matter of fact, oh man, we gonna have to make sure we tell Brother Joe, if you are watching this episode, we just want to shout you out, bro. But there was one thing that he also said that always stuck with me is, you look like your decision.
I remember that.
And as leaders, we do. We look like our decision, whether it's our health decisions, our financial decisions, our character decisions. Everything that you do as the leader, kind of having that self-awareness about who you are, what you're committed to, your values, your virtues, all of those types of things comprise that leader. And so you got to be real clear, when you start talking about making health decisions and things like that, those are key. But it's important for you to have those non-negotiables that are going to be real important in who you are. So you want to talk about what we think the 3 non-negotiables are?
Non-negotiables. Well, I think the first one is, self-trust, meaning, do you keep the promises you make to yourself? So, like us recently, we've been kind of, resetting, our personal life. And so, we started working out, 5 days a week. Now, I can't one week work out 5 days a week and then the next week don't work out at all. Now unless I'm injured or something like that, that's a different story. I have to tell myself whatever I tell myself I need to do. I need to follow up on and continue doing that, until I get to the result that I want or develop the habit, that stays and sticks long term. So saying what you're going to do, now we know that matters in business and everything, but it all starts with yourself. I can remember times, a lot of times where I would start a lot of things, but I would never finish. And every time I started and stopped, I would tell myself internally, okay, next time I'm gonna start and I'm gonna just keep on going. And I'm not gonna stop until the next time is stopped. So I would say in my estimation, I did not have personal integrity, and character as far as myself. So then how can I, when I won't even do it for myself, go try to teach and train or lead somebody else, with character and integrity when haven't even developed the habit for myself? It's an oxymoron, and so I therefore now am a hypocrite, to myself first, and so it doesn't translate. It never translates.
Yeah. You know what? It's so interesting that you said that, Brian, because I remember hearing, or let me say this. Sometimes the reason that we don't trust ourselves is because we lie to ourselves, right? So our identity becomes a lie identity, because you're the only person that knows the last lie you ever told. So if you say, hey, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do my work, or I'm going to do my workout, and then I don't, you feel bad, right? Like there's a guilt that's in there, like I done lied. You've lied to yourself. And what happens is, because sometimes we don't trust ourselves, or we don't hold ourselves accountable, or we don't push ourselves, we become this lie identity that we have developed for ourselves, and it keeps us stuck. Sometimes people don't realize, why am I going around this same mountain? Well, you keep lying to yourself. And the way to break out of it, though, how you become more trusting of yourself, is just do what it is that you say you're going to do. Be who you say it is that you want to be. Become that which it is that you want. And so when you do that, it pushes you. because you're not competing with anybody else but yourself. And you're not even, nobody else knows those things that you tell yourself. But in order to trust yourself, you got to start not only telling yourself the right things, but doing the right things, taking the right actions for yourself, your behaviors, your words, your existence, because you will look like your decision.
100%. We look like our decisions. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm looking like I want to be down around 220 pounds. So what does that tell me? I put a plan in place and I'm sticking to it, so I can get to that goal. For instance, last night, now if y'all didn't know, today is Michelle's birthday. So happy birthday to Michelle.
Thank you.
I love you immensely. So,
love you right back.
But today is Michelle's birthday. But instead of me going out and getting a whole cake,
that was good.
I went out and got 2 slices and a little bit of ice cream because we're on a mission. We're trying to do some things differently in 2025. And so I put the little candle in there, and brought it in there to you so you could blow it out. Now, in times past, we all know what it was. I'd have got a whole cake and we would have ate the whole cake. But
yep.
It's
even
like,
if it's over a matter of 5 days, it's still you eating the whole cake. Right?
It's a million calories that you absolutely 100% cannot work off in no shape, way, or form. But our Pastor Jomo says it all the time. If you want something different, you have to do something different. Change begins with you. Mm-hmm. And what that does is, instead of me buying a whole cake and only getting a couple of slices, in regard to this personal character, integrity, and non-negotiables, now what that does is sends a signal to my brain. And it says, okay, I can enjoy this, but I only need a little bit of it. I don't need a whole cake. I just need a couple of slices, and then over time, that just kicks in and it sets.
It becomes your natural way. Yeah. No, that's really good. That was really good. I enjoyed my slice of cake and I don't feel deprived at all. All right, so let's jump into that non-negotiable number 2.
So non-negotiable number 2
emotional
is
discipline.
Emotional discipline. And that is very important because a lot of times we have to learn how to respond rather than react. Especially if you're thinking about going into business, but if you're just bringing it down just to us, if you're married, you need to do that with your spouse. If you have children, you need to do that with your children. If you're on the job with your coworkers, with your bosses and superiors, with your friends, with your family, when things aren't going right, are your emotions in check? What you used to say, I'm a fly off the handle and you jump to conclusions. I fly off the handle and you jump to conclusions, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, if you break that down, that's simply just a lack of emotional discipline. When you just go off, you go from 1 to 10. What's driving that behavior? Mm-hmm. If I always assume the worst, from what anybody is saying, I'm not properly running through a filter and say, hey, okay, this is why they said this. Am I looking at this through the right filter, through the right lens? So let me take a step back, and check myself emotionally, and just think about this before I, react, because I want to respond accordingly, to what's being said. And sometimes the proper response is not saying anything. It is just dialing back.
Yeah. You know what? It's so it's interesting. You said that. I would say that you fly off the handle. Like, so you could go from 1 to 10, right? Like you could go to 1 to 10. Me jumping to conclusions is I would assume things about a situation or people and stuff like that. But you're right. Emotional discipline, a lot of times we don't really think about our emotions and how the impact and the weight of them. And so I keep hearing everybody's talking to me this morning, but Apostle Horton, shout out to Apostle Horton, love, peace, and increase. But he would always say, and this is another one of those statements that I try to live by, and it is, Don't let your emotions cloud your sound judgment. Because the truth be told, most of the time, what somebody is telling us in sometimes in anger, sometimes in fear, sometimes in jest, but they're telling us something, and it's the way that they're communicating it that sometimes provokes that emotional reaction. And so if we're really thinking about, hey, we want to kind of keep the levers on how we're going to, because the only thing we can control is how we respond. So it's kind of, or not even kind of, it is listening for what is really being said. Then of course, you exercise all those good listening skills that says, hey, let me paraphrase back to you what I thought I heard, or let me make sure that I understand, not, sit quietly for a second. Like you said, sometimes it's remaining silent so that you can actually listen to what's being said to you rather than trying to create your response to what's been said. But I think emotional intelligence, when they talk about that now, and I would push anybody to really just do a little bit of research and kind of find out, dig a little bit deeper into what are they saying when they're talking about emotional intelligence? How does it impact or impair me? Because we are impaired or impacted by the way that we handle emotions and allow our emotions to drive, decisions we make, situations that we're in, as well as everything that we do in that leadership for ourselves. Emotional discipline is critical. You've got to be able, remember Pastor Bonner would say, in every situation, somebody's got to remain calm. Because when you're not, when you're irate or irate, you become irrational sometimes. And those emotions can just get off the grid. So you want to be able to balance yourself and kind of keep who you are in check in a way so that you can adequately and appropriately respond in everything it is that you're doing.
It's very critical, especially if you're looking to go into business, because you're going to have periods where it gets tough. People are going to say no. You're going to face rejection. When you have slow growth or when you have no growth and you don't see it, but you're grinding and you're trying and you're doing what and you have a coach and you're working out things with them and things are just not happening for you. You can't let yourself get to a place emotionally where that is affecting you, because it's a part of the game. We both have started businesses and we knew how tough it was in the beginning, but once you got going, so you can't, I know a big thing now is, body language, looking at people's faces and things like that. Can people see when you say no this time? Because you may come back and talk to that particular client or prospective client something 5 months, 6 months down the line, where you might not have said it, but your face may have shown your emotions. Mm-hmm. You're not verbal. Are you short with people? You said no. Okay, forget you. Is that showing on your face? So that's a part of it too. So being emotionally disciplined, I think something good for people to do is, at the end of the day, when you're starting your journey of being a leader of one, something good is to have a notebook, and at the end of every day, just kind of write down your emotions, especially if you're on your job or with your kids, about how you felt. My kids did this and this is how I responded or reacted. My boss said this is how I responded or reacted. And I think you'll find as you begin to write those things down in journal, you'll be able to collect a lot of data that will help you and propel you move forward, help you move forward, in the days, weeks, and months to come as you look to, go higher in whatever it is that you want to do. Absolutely.
No, I love that. Should we jump into the third non-negotiable?
Let's go.
All right. So the third one is decision ownership. Now, a lot of times we outsource the hard decisions, right? Like, okay, all right, what do you think I should do for this? And we give it to somebody else to make the decision for us. Listen, there is a real thing about doing the hard things. And sometimes it feels like it's hard to do, but once you do it, You start making hard decisions, you will always be able to make hard decisions, and you'll be able to live with the outcomes of those hard decisions because you have sharpened and strengthened that muscle. You got to do it. We can't throw the ball to somebody else to make decisions for us. You have to own your decision, especially as a leader of a company, leader of a team, within your organizations, whatever that looks like. You've got to be able to make hard decisions. Sometimes hard decisions is, I love my family, I love my friends, but the decision might be they're not a good fit to help me run my business. They want to help, but they may not be the best fit for running your business. Or I love this coworker. This is a great coworker for me. They're there and they're great, but they might also be the person that has a lot of, that off shifts a lot of their decisions to you. And you're like, you know what? You can't give your decisions to me. I'm going to make the decisions I need to, and then you give it back to them to make the decisions that they need to.
Yeah, I know early on when I got into management, I had a VP. He came in the room and he said to us, if I have to make decisions for you, I don't need you.
That's real.
So not only make the decisions quickly when you have the data, and even if when you don't have the data, make a decision based on the best information you have available at this time, like you say all the time. Make the decision and be able to live with it, and the consequences that come for it, but you need to be decisive, and even before you get into business, you just need to be decisive for yourself. I think about, the times, how many times I hesitated on making a decision, and something went by, something happened, and had I just pulled the trigger and made the decision, the outcome would have been favorable or greater. And so I think you do need to be decisive, and you do need to be able to make quick decisions and live with the consequences. Because, if you trust yourself, and you have good judgment and you have good character, and you have integrity and all of those things, most of the time you're going to make the right decision. I know a lot of times people say they put off having conversations, and people used to always say, and I still hear it to this day, we got to have a tough conversation. Got to have a tough conversation. Well, mentally, in my mind, what I started telling myself is, these are not tough conversations. They're just conversations that need to be had. This is a conversation that I have to have today or tomorrow, or right now, whatever the case may be, and so if you just kind of flip it, mentally in your head and just kind of reframe it, and say, okay, if I don't make this decision now, what will it cost me? Is another way of looking at it. Mm-hmm. So you're right. Being able to make quick, decisive decisions and own it is critical.
100%. And train yourself to make decisions quickly. Because I hear a lot of people talk about overthinking, right? Taking a lot, I've got to, think about it. And I do think that sometimes you may have to sleep on a decision before you make it. But I think a lot of times there are decisions that you can make quickly and make them quickly. And the more that you do that, the easier it becomes for you to have that. Again, it's another muscle that's being developed. You have to use it in order for that muscle to get strong, but train yourself to make decisions quickly. Then you won't overthink. You won't hesitate. Hesitation is a hindrance.
Yes.
And a lot of times overthinking is what feeds that hesitation, and that hesitation, then you become hindered in your ability to make quick decisions, your ability to make decisions at all, because you default to, I'm going to think about this, and you're going to think about it and think about it and think about it and think about it. And it's kind of like, make a decision. Stop. Keep thinking about it. Be about it. Do it or not do it, because doing it is a decision, or not doing it is a decision as well. But be clear about deciding.
Yeah, that used to be one of my one of the sayings. This media mogul who is now in a lot of trouble used to say all the time. I won't say their name, but they used to say it all the time. Don't talk about it, be about it.
Oh, okay.
You know, and I used to love that, you know, saying it is something that I kind of adopted. You know, the problem is, you know, you're either going to live by that or you're not, you know, or you're going to keep falling back into analysis paralysis.
Right.
You know, and you become paralyzed and you don't make decisions. And that is, you can't absolutely 100% cannot do that in business or in life, just period.
It's best not to.
You know, if you're struggling in your marriage or you're struggling with your kids, you need to get help. Make the decision just to go get help. You know, whatever it is, you know, if it's your health, you know, whatever it is, if you know, we taking care of our parents now, you know, we had to make certain decisions. I had to make certain decisions, you know, and I had to make them quickly, you know, for quality of life. You know, and so you're right. So,
all right. So I know that there's one other thing that we want to give you before we close out this episode, and that's the pre-business toolkit, right? So before you build your business offer or your funnels and website to take orders and get services, we want you to develop your morning routine. A morning routine will help you, you know, trust yourself more, be in touch with yourself more, so you'll have that emotional discipline that you're gonna need. You'll be able to make decisions quicker. But start with a morning routine, because sometimes it is, like you said, just, you know, journal a little bit. Like, how did I felt this way about this thing? This bothered me. This hurt me. This challenged me. You know, but write that stuff down, you know, and in that morning routine, you know, most of us, we wake up and we have a prayer time that we spend with the Lord, or just kind of to get started in the day, but develop a morning routine, your workout, your worship, your time of prayer, your time of looking yourself over, so that you kind of develop that self-awareness for you, what helps make you better, you know, feeling better, stronger, more committed to who it is that you are. So I think that's one thing.
And then you also need to create a personal mission statement. Mm-hmm. You know, what am I about? You know, what do I want to do? Mm-hmm. You know, where do I want to go? You know, who do I want to serve? Who do I want to help? You know, and that'll be your North Star, you know, your guide, you know, for everything that you do and everything that you filter your decisions through. You know, is this personal mission statement that you keep coming back to, and that is a self-check for you or for anybody. You know, when you create that mission statement, okay, is this decision lining up with the personal mission statement that I have for my life? Does this line up with the mission statement that I have for my family, for my business that I want to start? Are these decisions that I'm making, I'm filtering everything through that lens? It's just like the Bible. You know, we filter all of our decisions and how we live through the Bible, because the Bible is what governs, you know, how believers live. So personal mission statement is very, very important to create for yourself.
Yeah. And then lastly, we think that do a 15-minute daily review, right? Check in with yourself at the end of every day for 15 minutes and set the timer on your clock. But give yourself 15 minutes to just do a daily review. What did I learn? What was successful? What was good? What was bad? Or what do I need to change? And when you start to do that, you can kind of see yourself, you having those conversations with yourself, and you're aware, you become different. You stand up. You the boss for real now. You the boss with all the sauce. You're able to do those hard things, make really good decisions, and make those decisions quickly. You'll be surprised at who you become. All right. That's all I've got. You got anything else for this particular episode, or are we going to wind it on down?
I'm good.
All right. You guys, we hope that you have had a great time tuning in. Make sure you like, share, hit us up in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, I'm going to close it out and kick it over to Brian.
And as always, some people are meant to create small businesses. Some people are meant to create a large business. And some people are meant to create empires. Which one are you?